afternoon, everyone. So you must all be thinking, yeah, yet another communications company, right? So many communications, conversational AI, this, that, and all that. So there's a reason for that. I mean, if you look at it, right, if you look at the e-commerce and digital native summit, it's powered by communications. So communications are very important for e-commerce. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to not talk too much about features, this, that, AI, and all that, but take you through a journey of the e-commerce space and the communication space, more importantly, and try to sort of set a base for where we are going, especially in terms of innovation in the communication space for e-commerce. So before we go into the future, it helps us to have a look back at the history. So if you look at it, how when you talk about innovations, right, in the communication space, the first innovation I would say would be the telephone itself. Somebody had to invent the telephone before people could communicate. And with that, from there, once the telephone started and peer-to-peer communication started, I talked to my friends and stuff like that. The next step was obviously, can people talk to businesses? And once they started talking about businesses, the call centers came into place. Because once you are talking to a business, you're not talking to one person, but you're talking to a business. And a business is then represented by a call center. So I'll just walk you through the timeline of communications. This is what just happened. I mean, obviously somebody had to invent the telephone. And once a telephone came, before we move on to the call centers, the PBX came. I mean, multiple people, the switchboards, all of you remember the old movies where the used to take the switchboard, manually connect the switches and then connect people. But then once it was manually being done, obviously what would people do? They would automate it. And the next innovation was the ACD, automated call distribution. So rather than some person actually taking out the call and connecting it to some person, a software used to do that. And that was the next innovation. So we've been going through step by step, telephone, then manual, then automated kind of thing. And then the biggest innovation which happened was toll-free numbers. Now toll-free numbers are not so big in India, but obviously in the US they are pretty huge. And the biggest change was the business would pay. Now once I set up a phone as a business, I want people to call me. So how can I ask them to call me? I'll take the charge. So that's where the toll-free number, even a simple thing like a toll-free number, is such a big innovation that allowed so many people to make the calls. Even now that's available. And if you go on forward, obviously VoIP, queuing became important. Once toll-free numbers came and it was free to call, people started calling. And once people started calling in huge numbers, you figured out that there were not enough agents. Once you figured out not enough agents were there, how do you handle it? Then you have to set up a queue. And once you set up a queue, you have to have proper distribution. So all these things keep on happening. And now we are into the cloud and the speech-enabled AI and all these innovations have come in place. So this is sort of the timeline for you to get an idea of where we are. Now, but the thing is, all of these innovations, if you look at it right, the grounding force for that was the telephone. It's a phone call. But now that's changed. I mean, in the last 10 years, 15 years, if you look at it, ever since the invention of the iPhone, it's completely changed. Now everybody has a computer in their hand. Phone is just an app. But still, call centers are driven through the idea of a phone system. We have to go back. We have to go back to first principles approach. Why should it be that it should be like a phone call or some new conversation? Why can't we think? Now just think, right? I mean, every person that you're communicating with, every one of your customer has a computer in their hand and they're always connected. Bandwidth is not an issue. So all these things, how can we innovate? What can we do to make things better? So some of the things, right? I mean, if you look at from an e-commerce perspective, to be frank, right? I mean, this works for anything. You can replace e-commerce with any other domain also. But the thing is, communications are important. And why are they important? Obviously, that's the cycle. You need awareness. If you want awareness, you need to have outbound messages. You need to have marketing messages. Then you need to have people, when they purchase, give them information. When they are delivering, you again have to give them information. After delivery, you have to have service. So everywhere, communication is a touch point. So you have to spend a lot of time because that's the place where you show the impact. What is your message of your company? That happens through your communication. And in general, the contact centers have always been the heart of communication. That's where it all starts. Either it's an outbound message or an inbound message, it always starts with the contact center. Now, what has happened in the last, I would say, 3-4 years is that AI has sort of come in into this whole picture. Earlier, it was that contact centers were there, a lot of data was getting generated, people were talking about it, but nobody was analyzing this data. Now, what has happened with the advent of AI, especially deep learning, if I want to put it that way, is that all this data can now be harnessed to push forward the innovation. So let us look at how some of the things can be done. Okay, so if you look at it, mainly if I look at different stakeholders of a contact center, you have the agents, you have the supervisors, you have the management, and you have the customers. And in every place, AI and these communications play a role. So let's try to have a look at what are these specific things that we can do. Now, what I'll try to do is I'll not try to go in depth into any of these things because I just want to lay the foundation. Given that it's a 15-minute talk, I'll just try to sort of lay the foundation of what are all these innovations that we have encountered and we see out there in the world. And what are some of the innovations that can happen in the future is what I'll try to go through. So first, I'll talk about the agent-facing innovations. Agents, as you know, are the core of a contact center. And they are ultimately the face of your business. Because ultimately, if whatever the customer, whatever the agent says gets replicated across, that's what is represented by the whole company. All of you might remember, I think it was like a couple of months back or 3 months back, there was some huge problem happened on Twitter. Some agent in Zomato, I think, said something to a particular customer, and then it went all over. I think he basically said that I don't know Hindi or something like that, and the agent said that, why don't you know Hindi? As you all know, what happened? The agent was not blamed. Zomato was blamed. So that's how important agents are. A single agent can make or break a company. So you have to be careful with what tools you provide to them and how can you even monitor them because they are working on your behalf. So these are some of the things. I mean, from an innovations perspective, what we see happening in the near future, the first thing is work from anywhere. The pandemic has completely changed the outlook. Earlier, call centers means what? You come to a small, stuffy room, all of you sit side by side, maybe in a 3 foot by 3 foot kind of a thing space. You can't even move around, put your headphone on and start taking calls. That's not true anymore. That need not be true anymore. I mean, agents can sit in their home, in their pajamas and take calls. So obviously, I mean, if somebody tracks you, then you'll have to put on proper clothes, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. The second thing, very important thing is micro shifts. This is again a big thing that's picking up. If you think about it, why should an agent clock in at 9 and clock out at 5 throughout? It need not be. These were all there because they were on premise, they had to travel all the way and come and sit. So anyway they have come, let them sit for 8 hours. That need not be the case anymore. So micro shifts and work from anywhere, these are going to help a lot. Gamification also helps because as you know, the biggest problem that agents have is repetitiveness. It's the same call, it's the same problem. And every customer calls and says that your product is shit. And the agent has to listen to that and then respond back. So if you gamify that a little bit, then it will help their morale much better and attrition will be lower. And we see a lot of gamification startups also coming up in the contact center area. The other big things the next things are obviously related to AI. Now, the first thing that will happen is from an agent side, the filtering will happen automatically, like spam and bad words kind of thing. They'll not be transferred to an agent. You can stop it at the first level itself. This I'm talking mainly about chat, Twitter, Facebook, or digital data. Call data is very hard to stop in the initial stage right now. You can't obviously stop it, but you can monitor for escalations. The other big thing which will come up is a single omni-channel toolbar. Right now, agents sort of log into different toolbars to handle different channels, or there are different agents for different channels. There are WhatsApp agents, there are call agents, there are email agents. We see that all going away. It's going to be one channel, omni-channel, one agent can handle everything. These are some, screenshots of what we have. Single conversation, omni-channel, sentiment monitoring, all of this will come in. This will be built into the system. I mean, every contact center software will have this. There's no way you can avoid this. The second thing we see is the supervisor facing. Now, the other stakeholder is a supervisor. Now, again, supervisor has a different problem now. Earlier, everybody was sitting here in a single room. The supervisor sat at the front like a teacher of a classroom. He would look at it and say that, hey, you are not working. Hey, what happened to your call? But now agents are sitting in their home. So you need better monitoring tools and you need AI to help them. Most of the time what happens is because there are so many calls that happen in a day, it's almost impossible for a supervisor to listen to all calls. So they used to sample the calls. Now it's not needed anymore. Because of AI, you can actually track every call and see what happened, what was the intent of the call. All those kind of analysis can be made. Most of it, screen recordings are also going to be default. Once that happens, it's going to be a little bit harder for the agent's life, but you can't avoid it. Management-facing innovations, again, this will be at a higher level, but the data will be the same. It will be the call data and the chat data and the Twitter data that you can encounter. But on top of this, we envisage a conversational intelligence layer, a layer which automatically identifies intents. You shouldn't be able to hard program or hard code the intents. So we see that this automatically identifying intents, automatically identifying sentiments, keyword, these are all there. I mean, the technology is there. It's more of a chance of adaptation of this technology. So customer-facing innovations, we see that customers mostly want automated self-service, if at all possible. As much as possible, I can just call and my query is answered. I don't care whether it's a bot or human. Preferably, if it's a query, generally a bot also is fine. But if it's a support issue, if I have to shout, then I have to talk to an agent because I don't get satisfaction by shouting to a bot. So you still need people. You can't avoid them. But then customers will need bots and those kind of things. Second thing is they'll also ask for omni-channel. When I'm on a call, why can't I just switch to WhatsApp or chat and just say, one of the biggest problem, right? I mean, they ask you for a ticket number, let us say. And you say that BA456. Did I say B or P? I have to say B for Bombay or P for something. Why all that problem? I should be just able to just chat while I'm on the call. So these kind of things, we see that happening in the coming future. Customer-facing innovations. Yeah, these are the buzzwords, right? Metaverse, virtual avatars. There's still a lot of time. But we have to be ready. We have to think about these things. This will happen when you have the devices with the customers. Right now, we don't have it, but I would say the latest version of Oculus Rift, solves a lot of problem. Once it's in the hands of most people, because it's wireless, then they can go into the metaverse. But the thing is this, even if you go in the metaverse, you will have questions. And if you have questions, you need a contact center. So even in the metaverse, you can't avoid communication and you can't avoid contact centers. So they will still be there. The other innovation that has happened is trusted calls. Both Google and Truecaller, they provide trusted call facilities because of spam. Now, the contact center industry created spam. And then they created the innovation to stop this spam, which we call it as trusted calls. So we make money both ways, okay? So, but that's the innovation. It's an innovation. Once you find something, then you go to the next thing, you solve something, you move on from there. So these are some customer-facing innovations. And partner-facing innovations, this has become another big thing. These have become new. What I would say is even 5-6 years back, we wouldn't think that a delivery partner or a partner, which we call it, as a stakeholder in a contact center. But a majority of conversations are happening with partners, whether it is the grocery delivery partner or driver partners or so many other different ways. Even if you want to talk about EdTech, even the educators are called partners. So there are so many of these people, and there are a lot of innovations happening in that, especially mass call and those kind of things. So yeah, the future is pretty much bright. What I would say is AI is here to stay for sure. Mainly, I would say that if I look at the next year, I'm going to say that if I have to put my bets are going to be on generative AI. We already have AI where you can type something and the image comes up automatically. You have AI where you can type some small text and it can write a whole email. So this is available as of now. And we are sure that in the coming future, these are going to be integrated in almost all contact center softwares. And you will see a lot more generative AI. For example, in the e-commerce space, retail space, you will have automated generation of your face over attire. This is a reality right now. DALI is an example of AI that's going to do this. So like this, I think AI is going to be there and the future is bright. And I think communications are here to stay. Thank you, everyone.